Jeffis. 3 naked women are brought before other prisoners. They are sat down, a guard takes a pair of pliers and starts mutilating their faces with them. There are noses broken, ears slit, cheeks bruised, and lips torn. Then another guard brings a pot of acid, which he starts pouring into the open wounds of the 3 women. The excruciating pain that the sizzling acid in the wounds caused would make the woman faint. But when this happened, when the woman escaped the pain and suffering, they would just be woken up by the guards using water. This and many other horrifying tortures and killings happened in the killing fields during the Khmer Rouge regime of the country from 1975 to 1979. This mass genocide that claims collectively more than 1 million lives of the Cambodian people who fell into the undesirable category based on the Year Zero cleansing campaign was one of the most brutal mass murder massacres in history, and yet the common man knows very little, if anything at all, about this historic event and its surrounding information. So why are the Khmer Rouge and the Killing Fields massacres so unknown?
Cambodia's history is tightly woven with French colonial influence and indigenous heritage. Established in 1863, the French Protectorate at King Norodom's request marked the inception of a complex era for the nation. Joining into the French Indochina Union in 1887, Cambodia embarked on a journey of administrative reorganization and economic development, with a focus on agriculture and industry. Despite economic growth, Cambodian nationalism remained relatively subdued, even amidst the revolts of 1885 to 1887 and territorial exchanges with Siam. Meanwhile, prior to the turbulence of the Khmer Rouge, Cambodia flourished as a land steeped in rich cultural history. The legacy of the Khmer Empire, spanning from the 9th century to the 15th centuries, adorned Cambodia with a grandeur that echoed through Southeast Asia. Blessed with natural abundance from vast rainforests to expansive rice fields, Cambodia's economy thrived, earning it the moniker Rice Bowl of Asia. Society thrived as well, with close-knit communities woven together in rural simplicity. Agriculture formed the backbone of the economy, fostering strong ties to the land and environment. Amidst the verdant landscape, temples stood as symbols of spiritual devotion and communal gathering places, fostering unity and peace among diverse religious groups. Under the political mantle of King Norodom, Sihanouk Cambodia navigated a path of constitutional monarchy where political freedom coexisted with occasional turmoil, creating a delicate balance of power. As World War II reshaped global dynamics, Cambodia experienced brief independence amidst the dissolution of French colonial administration by Japan in 1945. Post-war struggles ushered in a period of political chaos marked with negotiations with the Free French and the emergence of political parties. Sihanouk's diplomatic endeavors culminated in France granting full independence to Cambodia in 1953, a watershed moment that marked the nation's assertion of control over its destiny. Yet, beneath the surface of political maneuvering and colonial legacies, Cambodia retained its essence, a land of resilient communities, vibrant culture, and a deep reverence for its heritage.
Pol Pot, originally named Son of Sar, was born on May 19, 1925, in Kampong Thom, province Cambodia. He was a significant Khmer political figure who was profoundly impacted history. His extreme communist government, known as the Khmer Rouge, brought immense suffering to the Cambodian people from 1975 to 1979. Pol Pot came from a wealthy family and had a privileged upbringing. His time in France for education exposed him to French culture, which greatly influenced his beliefs. While in Paris, he deeply became committed to Marxist ideas, which strongly shaped his future actions upon his return to Cambodia. He became involved in the underground communist movement and quickly gained prominence within the Communist Party of Kampuchea, later known as the Khmer Rouge. In 1975, after years of civil strife, Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge took control of Cambodia, renaming it Democratic Kampuchea. Their goal was ambitious and radical, to establish an agricultural paradise by eliminating perceived threats to their ideology. These included intellectuals, professionals, ethnic minorities, and even people who were masses, seen as symbols of intellect. Under Pol Pot's rule, Cambodia descended into chaos. Urban areas were emptied as people were forcibly moved to rural regions to toil in labor camps. To the infamous killing fields witnessed numerous atrocities, with over 1 million Cambodians killed or died due to starvation, exhaustion, and illness. Families were torn apart and societal bonds dissolved. Pol Pot ruled with absolute authority, using fear and propaganda to maintain control. Dissent was swiftly crushed, with even his closest allies facing purchase and execution. The regime paranoia and brutality were boundless, as anyone suspected of opposing to the Khmer Rouge's ideas faced severe consequences. In 1979, after Vietnamese intervention, the Khmer Rouge was overthrown. Pol Pot retreated to the jungles near the Thai border, leading to a guerrilla insurgency until his death in 1998. His legacy is one of the infamy and horror, with the scars of the atrocities still haunting Cambodia, serving as a chilling reminder of the perils of unchecked power and extremist beliefs. Pol Pot's brutal rule had a lasting impact on Cambodia, with the repercussions of his action echoing through history. His name serves as a stark warning about the depths of human cruelty when ideology overrides empathy, rationality. His legacy is a somber reminder that the pursuit of an ideal society at any cost can lead to unimaginable suffering and tragedy.
The rise of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia was a tragic and dark period in the country's history. During the 1960s and early 1970s, there was great political unrest and growing discontent among the people in Cambodia. A major factor was the growing influence of the Cold War on the region, with Cambodia affected by the geopolitical rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Cambodia had neutral foreign policy at the time, but was always faced with a choice of taking a side between the conflict of the Soviet Union and the Americans. With this political instability and economic difficulties, the rise of communist parties was already increasing, especially in the agricultural sector. This was because at the time, 3/4 of Cambodia's population worked on the fields. One of the communist parties was the Khmer Rouge. It was only small at the time, but extremely nationalistic. This party was led by Pol Pot, as he had promised to make the Khmer Rouge a new, equal society free from corruption and exploitation. This appealed to many who hoped for change and improvement in their country. In the 1970s, the conflict between government and insurgents escalated when Prince Sihanouk was deposed in a coup. The new government, led by General Lon Nol, initiated a policy against the Khmer Rouge and their supporters, leading to an escalation of violence and political persecution. But this only strengthened the support for the Khmer Rouge among sections of the population and who felt increasingly alienated from the government in Phnom Penh. The communists achieved many successes in Cambodia and captured more and more territory. The government weakened more and more in this struggle, so their influence in Cambodia became less and less. By 1975, the Khmer Rouge had taken control of most of Cambodia, officially winning this horrific civil war. The Khmer Rouge then proclaimed the democratic Kampuchea, in which Pol Pot later became the country's prime minister. He implemented a radical social reform aimed at creating an agrarian utopia. Cities were depopulated, people were forced into rural labor, and intellectuals, religious leaders, and perceived opponents were systematically persecuted and murdered.
The Khmer Rouge era in Cambodia, which lasted from 1975 to 1979, is a horrific period in the country's history that left deep wounds in the Cambodian society. Led by Pol Pot, a radical communist movement that thought for a radical reform of society, the Khmer Rouge seized control of almost all of Cambodia. Their goal was to create a utopian agrarian society in which all urban and intellectual influence would be eliminated, in need of a return to a simple and purely agrarian existence. As a part of the radical plans, cities were depopulated and the population was forced to move to the countryside. And if you could not physically cope with the journey to the countryside, you were left behind or executed. These were mostly children or elderly. The population was divided into groups, with families being segregated from each other. Every citizen was stripped of their belongings and given the same clothes and haircut, characterized by a black shirt, a black trousers, and a red checked scarf. Private property, money, and religion were destroyed and outlawed. In this new regime, for example, all our history books or any form of education were destroyed. The people were sent to the countryside, where they were subjected to heavy forced labor, where they had to produce impossible numbers of crops and lived in small collective farming projects. Pol Pot wanted to isolate Cambodia from the world and make it mostly autarkic, but it was impossible with the conditions the people were living in. Many were malnourished, overworked, or struggling with diseases. Many died in these conditions. In addition to forced displacement and forced labor, the people of Cambodia also faced a wave of violence and terror under the Khmer Rouge regime. Intellectuals, religious leaders, ethnic minorities, and anyone considered a threat to the regime were systematically persecuted, tortured, and murdered. It was a time of deep paranoia and fear, when people were forced to spy and betray each other to survive. The notorious detention and the torture centers, such as the famous Sector 21 prison in Phnom Penh, testified to the atrocities committed under the Khmer Rouge regime. In these Khmer Rouge detention and torture centers, some of the most heinous and inhuman crimes known to men took place. Detainees were subjected to indescribable torture to force them to make false confessions or give information about alleged conspiracies against the regime. Many died as a result of inhuman treatment, while others were executed as part of the Khmer Rouge's merciless purges, but a few were able to escape these detention and torture centers. This is also why those rank as one of the most horrific genocides in human history.
The Khmer Rouge's killing fields are vast fields where unspeakable atrocities took place. These fields were the scene of unimaginable human suffering and tragedy during the reign of terror of Pol Pot and his followers in Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. The killing fields were not just one location, but a series of sites scattered across the country where the Khmer Rouge carried out their mass killings. These gruesome sites were often remote and hidden, meant to keep the world outside Cambodia ignorant of the horrors that took place there. The people taken to the killing fields were victims of the brutal Khmer Rouge regime. They were arrested on suspicion of opposition to the regime, real or perceived links to foreign powers, or simply because of their intellectual or religious background. These innocent men, women and children were subjected to torture, humiliation and inhumane treatment before being brutally murdered. For example, to save bullets, members of the Khmer Rouge decided to kill people by blunt force, hitting them on the head with hard objects, usually stones. Or another gruesome example, members of the Khmer Rouge hurled babies' heads against the hard bark of trees, killing the babies. They had a reason for this with the quote, "To kill the grass you must also remove the root." The purpose of the killing fields was not only to kill people, but also to set a terrifying example of the consequences of resistance to the Khmer Rouge regime. Through public executions and mass graves, the Khmer Rouge wanted to terrorize and intimidate the population so that no one would dare to resist their rule. The atrocities at the killing fields served as a warning to anyone who dared to speak up against the regime. Whoever resisted would suffer the same fate as those who were murdered here. The killing fields were places steeped in fear and despair. The air was filled with the sound of pain and suffering, while the ground was drenched with the blood of innocent victims. Sector 21, also known as S21 prison, was one of the most terrifying and gruesome locations during the Khmer Rouge rule. Located in the capital Phnom Penh, this former high school served as a sinister center of torture, death and terror. The purpose of Sector 21 was to interrogate, torture and eliminate perceived opponents of the regime in a ruthless attempt to maintain complete control over the population and suppress any potential resistance. Within the walls of S21, thousands of men, women and children were detained, accused of allegedly resisting the Khmer Rouge. Upon arrival, each prisoner was photographed and then they were tied with iron chains in a room with too many people. Every aspect of the day was controlled. Beatings were inflicted for drinking water, for sleeping, eating, or talking without permission. Prisoners were tortured to obtain information, often about subjects that they had no knowledge about, such as the CIA or the KGB, or to extract false confessions. The atrocities committed in Sector 21 were indescribable. Prisoners were tied up, beaten, electrocuted, raped, and subjected to various other forms of torture. It is estimated that between 14 and 20,000 people were brought to this prison to be tortured, interrogated, and often executed. The exact number of the victims is difficult to determine due to the secrecy and chaotic nature of the Khmer Rouge. Of this huge group of prisoners, only a handful, by some estimates, survived.
By the late 1970s, Cambodia was in the grips of a nightmare. Under the brutal Khmer Rouge regime, the suffering inflicted by their rule had reached a breaking point. In January 1979, Vietnamese troops made a decisive move, invading Cambodia and seizing control of the capital Phnom Penh. This bold action effectively shattered the Khmer Rouge's formal grip on the country. The invasion was motivated by several factors, including the Vietnamese government's horror at the Khmer Rouge atrocities and their desire to protect their ethnic Vietnamese living in Cambodia. However, the Khmer Rouge didn't simply vanish with the fall of Phnom Penh. Instead, they retreated to remote regions, particularly along the Thai-Cambodian border. From these hideouts, they continued their fight through guerrilla warfare against the Vietnamese-backed government in Phnom Penh. In a twist that confounded many observers, despite their reputation for brutality, the Khmer Rouge found support from the Western powers, notably the United States and China. These nations viewed the Vietnamese intervention as troubling. Extensions of Soviet influence in Southeast Asia in response, they lent their support to the Khmer Rouge, adding complexity to an already tangled situation. Meanwhile, cracks began to appear within the Khmer Rouge itself. Challenges to Pol Pot's leadership emerged from the faction within the party. Some members questioned the extreme policies and advocated for a more pragmatic approach. These internal rifts weakened the regime cohesion further, complicating its already precarious position. The global stage was undergoing its own transformations during the period while the Cold War still raged. There was a gradual thawing of ideology divisions between superpowers. As a result, the Khmer Rouge radical communist ideology fell of favor internationally. The changing geopolitical landscape, the conflict between Cambodia and Vietnam perished throughout the 1980s. The Khmer Rouge continued their resistance against the Vietnamese-backed government, but their power gradually ebbed away. By the early 1990s, mounting international pressure and diplomatic negotiations paved the way for a peace process that ultimately led to a dismantling of the Khmer Rouge. In hindsight, the downfall of the Khmer Rouge marked the end of a dark chapter in Cambodia's history. It also serves as a reminder of the complexities of geopolitical and the enduring impact of ideology clashes on the lives of the ordinary people.
Pol Pot's final years were marked by a life of exile and isolation, a stark contrast to the once powerful and ruthless Khmer Rouge leader. After the fall of his regime in 1979, Pol Pot disappeared from the view of the international community and retreated to remote areas along the Thai-Cambodian border. Here he led a small existence as leader of a remnant of the Khmer Rouge, which continued to fight against the Vietnam-backed government in Cambodia. His attempts to garner support from foreign powers and organize a new uprising against the Cambodian government suffered failures time and time again. His group also had problems because people within disagreed and betrayed each other. As a result, he became less and less powerful and important. As the years passed, Pol Pot's health began to deteriorate. He suffered from several health problems, including heart disease and hypertension, which further contributed to his physical and mental deterioration. Despite his health problems, however, Pol Pot remained determined to continue his political and ideological struggle, albeit with less and less success and support. Finally, in 1997, Pol Pot was deposed by his former allies as leader of the Khmer Rouge and placed under house arrest. He spent his last days in relative solitude and isolation, surrounded by loyalists who had taken away his authority and power. On 15 April 1998, Pol Pot died under mysterious circumstances, never to be held responsible for the heinous crimes he had committed during his rule of Cambodia. His death marked the end of an era, but his legacy of terror and human suffering would continue for many years to come.
After the Khmer Rouge devastating rule, Cambodia was faced with a tough situation. There were problems like genocide, lots of people being very poor, and many people not being able to read or write. The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, caused a lot of destruction, and suffering millions of Cambodians had to leave their homes, were hurt, or died. Fixing the country seemed hard because the bad things from that time were still affecting Cambodia. A lot of making life difficult for people and the government. Despite all these big problems, Cambodia started to get better. It started to make friends with other countries again and asked for help with its big problems. Organizations from around the world and other governments gave a hand helping Cambodia fix the roads, make its economy stronger, and make sure that more people could go to the school and see a doctor. In 1993, things started to look up when Prince Norodom Sihanouk came back to run the country as a king, but with rules written in constitution. This was a big deal because it gave hope that things could get better after all bad times. Under his leadership, people tried to come together, forgive each other, and deal with what happened in the past. But getting better wasn't easy. The scars left by the Khmer Rouge time were bad, and it took a long time to fix things. People still didn't always get along, and it was hard to stop bad things like cheating, unfairness, and hurting people. Rights. These things made it tough Cambodia to become peaceful and rich. Still, Cambodians didn't give up. With help from others and by working hard, things started to improve. Even though the past was still painful, Cambodia showed that people could get through hard times and make things better if they started working together. Even though there were still big problems like poverty and not enough schools, Cambodia keeps going forward and hopes to be a better place for everyone. Today, Cambodia has changed a lot. Because of this attitude, many Cambodians today didn't live through the bad times of the Khmer Rouge, but the bad memories are still there. Politics can still be a fight. In 2019, the last Khmer Rouge leader lost his appeal and got a life sentence for what he did in Cambodia's economy has gotten stronger because of the things like making clothes, tourism, farming, building things, and selling land. It's expected to keep growing. 2024 showing that Cambodia is getting stronger again. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, is working with the Cambodians to make sure it grows in a way that helps everyone and protects the environment. Cambodia wants to use the new technology and work towards its goal for making life better for everyone. But there are still problems like not having enough money, people not being able to read, and needing to make sure that government is working well. Even with these problems, Cambodia wants to use new technology and work towards its goals for making life better for everyone. But there are still problems like not having enough money, people not being able to read, and needing to make sure the government is working well. Even with these problems, Cambodia is heading in a good direction and wants to be a place where people can live well while taking care of the earth and treating everyone fairly.
In addressing the glaring absence of educational coverage on such a monumental tragedy like genocide within our middle/high schools, one would naturally anticipate at least some level of discourse. However, the reality is starkly different. Why is that? It is important to state that there is little to no research done on this specific subject. While we did our research, aka a survey, reviewing books, etc., it was on a relatively small scale. There should be more research done on the more international scale to draw a better conclusion. But without further ado, let's continue. Our survey revealed some striking results. Out of the 58 respondents, only 20% were aware of the Khmer Rouge and the Killing Fields massacre. A staggering 65% admitted that their history curriculum did not cover these events in detail, if at all. These findings highlight the significant educational gap in our current system. Addressing this gap is not just about filming and historical knowledge, but also about fostering empathy and sense of global responsibility among students. One plausible explanation for this gap lies within the design of the curriculum itself. Educational authorities may opt out to streamline historical content, selecting only a fraction of the vast tapestry of human history. This decision often caters to the needs of the students who may not pursue history as their primary field of study, hence necessitating only a cursory understanding of past events. Consequently, topics as weighty as genocide might be omitted in favor of a broader, more general historical narrative. Moreover, the constraint of time looms heavily over educators. With the finite hours available in a school year, teachers are compelled to make difficult choices regarding which historical events to prioritize. Inevitably, this results in certain subjects being sidelined for others deemed more pressing or foundational. Regrettably, the profound implication of genocide may fall victim to these time constraints, leaving them unexplored within the classroom. Another factor influencing the omission of genocide from curricula could stem from regional focus. The educational frameworks often center around events that directly impact or originate from the region in which the school is situated. For instance, as a European-centric high school, the Dalton curriculum might prioritize teaching events that shape Europe's trajectory, potentially overlooking atrocities that occurred elsewhere, such as the Khmer Rouge massacre. This localized approach, while tailored to address the needs and interests of a specific student population, perpetuate a limited worldview and fail to adequately address the global ramifications of genocide.
The importance of remembrance cannot be overstated. To progress as a society, we must notice the lessons of our history, particularly the darkest chapters like the Khmer Rouge regime. Forgetting such atrocities will be tantamount to condoning them. It is imperative that we confront the brutality of these events head-on and vow never to repeat them again. Education is our most powerful tool. In this regard, by teaching about the past horrors in schools, we equip future generations with the knowledge and the empathy to resist similar ideologies and actions. This is especially crucial for young minds, susceptible to manipulation by political agendas and media. Narrative through remembrance, we honor the victims and commit ourselves to building a future rooted in compassion and understanding rather than repeating the mistakes of the past.
In conclusion, the Khmer Rouge and the massacre in the killing fields stand as horrifying testaments to the depths of human cruelty and consequences of unchecked power. Yet, despite the magnitude of these atrocities, they remain largely unknown to the generational populace. This lack of awareness can be attributed to several factors. Firstly, educational curricula often prioritize broader historical narratives over specific events, leaving little room for in-depth exploration of atrocities like the Khmer Rouge genocide. Time constraints further exacerbate this issue, forcing educators to make difficult decisions about which topics to cover in limited classroom hours. Additionally, regional biases in educational frameworks may lead to focus on events that directly impact the local region, further marginalizing global atrocities. However, the importance of remembrance cannot be overstated. Through education and collective remembrance, we can equip future generations with the knowledge and empathy to resist similar ideologies and actions. It is imperative that we confront the brutality of these events and vow never to repeat them again. In doing so, we honor the victims and commit ourselves to building a future rooted in compassion and empathy.